I have far too many cotton or blend shirts that were supposedly made for my size as per their charts that just don't fit right but were close enough at the time of purchase. It's one of the reasons I've been surprised when a pattern builds in a certain amount of ease, because my store-bought clothing barely explores that region of fit. Even worse, t-shirts. Like probably many of you, it's the comfy shirt I reach for the most, and 9 times out of 10, I expect a t-shirt to fail me in some way. It's either unisex, which means it's made for a man, thus slim-hipped and no boobs, so it's tight, or it's built for someone shorter than me, so I'm constantly pulling it down because it lacks the extra length I require, or the manufacturer skimped out and made things to fit until you hit a certain amount of washes, at which point it's shrunk and disintegrating. I need shirts. Well, I need good separates as a whole, but I need a good variety of tops. Nothing super fancy, but things that look good and are comfy. Last year I attempted the Liseron blouse by Wildflower Design and the Gilbert top by Helen's Closet. Liseron is cute, but I had some fit issues around the shoulders, so I don't wear it as often as I hoped. And I miscalculated the pattern adjustments for the Gilbert top, so it's not in the current wardrobe rotation. It's awaiting its time. I'm batting 0 for 2 here. I recently picked up some knit fabric from Fabric Depot. The almost cartoonish floral pattern and color just kind of jumped out at me and told me to take it home, so I did. It looks like I may have enough here to make a couple of tops. That is to say, comfy tops for a more curvaceous female body. So that's this week's project, tops to fit my curves. This will be a bit of an adventure because I've never sewn knit fabric before. Guess I'll be relying on the instructions and possibly the power of the internet. We'll make a couple of woven tops soon. I've chosen Cashmerette's Grafton top and Ellie and Mac's Sweetie Pie tunic. The patterns I'm using are cute, but they also aren't terribly fancy. That's not to say they aren't good patterns, just that they aren't a viral it pattern like a poofy pirate or poet shirt or historically accurate underwear or a dress covered in glittery images of some sort of fruit. They're basic staples. Cute, but basic. The Sweetie Pie is listed as a dress or a tunic, but the shorter length looks a little bit more like a skater dress. I'll be omitting the patch pockets because I really don't want anything to distract from the pattern on the fabric. I know, a long shirt or a short dress without pockets? Heresy. I'll have to make a handbag or something soon to make up for it. Grafton, like most Cashmerette patterns, is sorta choose your own adventure. You can make it a top, a dress, separates, give it an asymmetric skirt, change the neckline, make it loose or super fitted, long sleeves, short sleeves, no sleeves. The list just goes on. There's a Venn diagram somewhere mapping out Cashmerette customers and closet historian viewers. The overlap is probably considerable. I've used at least one Cashmerette pattern in the past with pretty good results. The issues I had were mostly mine, I think. I didn't grade between the sizes properly and I lengthened where I probably shouldn't have. That's a learning to sew for your specific body issue. Let's get the patterns projected and traced so we can see what we're dealing with here. I've been thinking a lot about comfort lately. I regained some of my lost weight over the winter, mostly due to stress, so comfortable clothing is really important to me. All bodies, and particularly overweight and obese bodies, are unique, and as a woman of size, finding things that fit my unique shape is a challenge. I can try on 3 different same-size shirts at Torrid or Pennington's and have them all fail in 3 different ways. I've learned that being able to customize fit, which is an ongoing process, really does help me feel more comfortable in not only my own clothing, but my body too. I can make a top and not have to worry that people will see down my shirt if I have to lean forward, or that my shirt will roll up over my stomach if I sit down or have to bend over to pick something up. Being able to make a top that covers my upper arms, isn't too tight, is long enough, and is also kinda cute is priceless to me. And right now we're in a world that seems really uncertain. My country just elected a new prime minister, and we're all worried about what's happening in the country south of our border. American goods, including clothing, are going to get pricey. It looks like making my own clothing, especially nice-looking clothing, is about to be a good life skill to have. And making things in general is just a really good way to calm anxiety, so I guess it's a win-win despite the curse of interesting times. Okay, so here's the deal. I don't have enough of the pattern fabric to make both the top and the tunic. So what I'm going to do is make the tunic / skater dress thing from the patterned material. And I picked this up back sometime last year, maybe the year before, thinking I'd make a nice cozy knit dress over Christmas or something. Never got around to it. So I think I've got about 6 or 7 meters here. I'm just going to toss it in the wash, and I guess that's what we're going to make the top out of. Does that meet with your approval? Behold, the reason why nothing gets done around here. What do you have to say for yourself? I used a few tools for cutting out the patterns. Rotary cutter and mat with pins to hold the pattern in place, quilting clips for pieces on the fold, and a couple of pairs of scissors. Eventually I switched to a spring assist pair of scissors, and I must say they're fantastic, particularly on damp arthritic days. The paper on my table is to help line up my grids on the projector. I took it off the table so I wouldn't cut through it. I have dreams of someday covering the table with gridded cutting mats. My takeaway from cutting out the pink fabric was to cut flat rather than on the fold. This meant tracing the pattern pieces that needed mirroring and taping them together down the center. Despite having to recut and tape pattern pieces, not having to make sure my fabric was folded evenly at just the right spot with no wrinkling or bunching saved a lot of time. The burgundy fabric is very smooth and slick and likes to pull out of shape, so getting it to stay put was a bit of a challenge. I had to weigh it down in a couple of places to keep it from moving around. It also doesn't take any kind of marking very well, so I felt I needed to cut into the notches. Avoid this if you can. Knit fabric like this stretches like nobody's business, and when you have a very small seam allowance, notching quickly turns into holes. Well, good morning. I got all but one set of sleeves cut out yesterday. Because cats. So that is first thing on the list, is getting those sleeves cut out, and then I am going to take things to the serger and start putting things together. And it looks like there aren't going to be a whole lot of seams. The most fiddly part is probably going to be putting in the collars. I know I'm kind of privileged having a serger and that not everybody has that opportunity. You can use a zigzag stitch if you have a normal sewing machine, or you can check and see if your machine has an overlock function. That's always an option. Sometimes you can change the tension on your standard machine, and that will allow you to work with knits. At least that's what the information I've been finding on the internet has been telling me. So let's get this thing put together. I'm thinking that the hardest part is probably going to be the necklines. At least that's the information I've gleaned from looking at the instructions, mostly because of having to stretch the fabric to be able to go around that area. I've done some web searching on how to put in a neckline on a knit top, as well as read the instructions in the pattern. So I'm hopeful that I can get that done with the least amount of sensory issues around the neck, because I am one of those folks who winds up with anything scratchy around the neck. I just won't wear it. I'm hoping that by the end of the day I'll have 2 nice new shirts. I can see these being one-day makes if you're on the ball with having your pattern ready to go and getting ready to cut out first thing. There aren't a lot of pieces in either of these patterns. There's, I think, like 4, maybe 5 pieces total to the patterns themselves. And looking over the instructions, it doesn't look like there's a lot of seams either. So it looks as though this is the kind of thing that if you need a new top for an afternoon, not exactly a walk-away dress kind of thing. It's not that formal looking, but definitely the kind of thing that could be a one-day make. Anyhow, I'm going to get to it. Got the neck bands placed, so this one is in place and ready to be stitched in. The cashmerette V-neck top was just a little bit more fiddly, and a lot of it had to do, and I don't know how much I managed to get filmed, but it's a matter of basting in the V part of the neck so that it will lie properly when you flip it up. Next, it will be, again, going around with the serger just to make sure that the stretch is there. Again, you could use zigzag stitch, or if you've got an overlock stitch on your machine, which my second-hand Pfaff does. Another option is you could just release your tension a little bit on your sewing machine, and apparently that will also help. Apparently you can also use twin needles if you've got them. I do, and I am probably going to use them for hemming and possibly around the sleeve. So we'll see how that goes. Well, this is a bit embarrassing. I've been done with the tops for a couple of days, and I'm not truly satisfied with either. Let me explain. The Grafton fits like a dream. The fabric's kind of thin and slinky, but the fit is fantastic. I think it's a slightly looser knit in addition to whatever fiber they used. Don't ask me what it is, because it was in the unknown fiber content section of the store, and I really just don't feel like setting off the smoke alarms today. Don't mind the poor stitching and the uneven hem. I chalk that up to the knit and the way it stretched a bit as I cut it out, despite being really careful. I'm also still trying to figure out sewing with the serger, and particularly with this fabric, fell back on zigzag stitch for seaming and used the serger mostly for tidying up my edges. The fabric is the problem here. The neck was a challenge, yes, but once I figured out what I was doing, the hardest part was getting the fabric to stay put under the needle. So we'll give this a 7 out of 10 because the pattern's doing almost all the work, and it's an extremely comfy top that I probably would live in if it didn't get a little bit itchy towards the end of the day. Now the sweetie pie. it's just too small. And that's even following the directions from Ellie and Mac. I was a little scared this might be the case, and I was actually a little hesitant to cut it out because I was looking at the pattern and thinking, this looks a little slender for my size. I even measured the pattern and myself and gave the pattern the benefit of the doubt because knits are stretchy. You might be able to see that it's tight in the torso and in the arms. These are supposed to be 3/4 length sleeves, and it doesn't look like it because they only go up so high before they just stop. And it's skewing the fit of the neckline, so my bra straps are showing. Don't get me wrong, it's a cute little mini dress and I look forward to wearing it in a couple of months, but for now, it's a no. 6 out of 10, mostly for the fabric and the cute skirt. Though, I guess the number does go up slightly if I just wear my hair down so that nobody can see my bra straps. So as far as comfy tops, maybe if I'd switched the fabrics for each pattern that would have been possible, but as it stands, it's a nope, which is rather unsatisfying, and I don't want to end on a down note, so I'm going to pattern hack the Grafton. If there's anybody playing Koklo Bingo, take the center square because pattern hacking needs to be right there in the middle. I'm going to go shopping. I need more fabric, maybe something similar to the pink stuff. If I'd had enough for 2 tops, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. Or maybe we would be, because right about now I'd be falling back on the slinky burgundy stuff and, well, getting back into that whole kettle of fish. Ashley told me about a new fabric store that just opened up in the south of the city with good prices on knits, so I'm going to go check that out. Wish me luck. I'm glad I managed to figure out how to mount the camera on the dash, or at least have a little tripod to put on the dash, but there's a guy doing his break in the truck next to me, so I'm a little self-conscious. Okay, so I managed to find Marshall Fabrics in the south end of Calgary, thanks to Google Maps for getting me here in one piece. It's a little out of the way, it's on a little side street. Makes it a little harder to find. Basically what makes it the hardest to find is the fact that there aren't any. It's in an industrial area, which means that all of the signs are flush to the buildings, so you have to drive around a little bit before you find the building that the store is actually in. So we'll head in a moment, and I'm hoping they have the fabric that I'm looking for. Basically a nice stable knit that's not too loose and slinky, that will make a good cross between the Grafton and the Sweetie Pie. So let's go on in and see what they've got. Well, that was kind of overwhelming. I'm really glad Marshall's is here. It was great being in a place that has a lot of selection. It's been ages since I was in a store that carried not only knits, but brocade and satin. And if I looked close enough, I probably could have found silk in addition to quilting, because there's a lot of quilting that goes on around here. There are quite a few quilting stores in town. In fact, there's at least 3 in the fairly close vicinity to where I am right now. Let's see, there's Fabricland, there's, I think it's called My Sewing Place. There's another one that's just over the train tracks that away, and then another one farther down Crowchild. I mean, this isn't a desert when it comes to quilting. So finding a store that actually caters to more than just quilting is fantastic. The drawback to it, of course, is that you walk out with more than you expected. So it looks like I'm making a couple of tops and a pair of pants at some point, because I found a plaid that I just love to pieces. And somewhere in the afterlife, my mother is laughing at me because she always wanted me to wear plaid pants, and the one time that she talked me into it, they were the weirdest looking flares you ever saw. Let's make these ones a little more punk. I think I am going to go home and see what I can make with my filthy lucre. I came home with 3 really great fabrics. A solid blue, a plaid, and a really soft knit covered in wee flowers. I chose the flowers and got to work. First job was altering the pattern. I wanted the top bit of the grafton and the skirt of the sweetie pie. This meant digging in my paper scraps to embiggen the pattern. I used the rough shape of the sweetie pie. In retrospect, I probably should have done more work on the curve of the hem. I chose the flower print. It's really cute and, as I said before, really soft. I'd had difficulty using just the serger for seams, particularly with the burgundy fabric. One of the things I learned on my expedition to Marshall Fabrics, the first grafton I made with the loose burgundy knit, apparently that's a sweater knit. I found similar fabric and that's what the label on the roll said. Now I know. But because it was so slippery, I'd had a hard time keeping my edges together, so I'd run something through the serger and find a hole later where the fabric had slipped out of the seam. This was particularly bad on the neckline. My solution for this shirt was to zigzag the 3/8-inch seam allowance using the sewing machine, then use the serger to overlock the already seamed edges afterwards. I also didn't cut into the notches. Instead, I used pins to mark where the notches were. Big difference. The fabrics I used all had their own personality and feel. The burgundy knit, as mentioned, was difficult to work with, but looks great and, for the most part, feels nice. The pink floral? Much more sturdy with a bit less stretch. It's thicker and seems to have more cotton feel to it. It's possible it would have made a really wild pair of leggings. The gray with daisies is smooth and feels like a t-shirt or pajama fabric, so a jersey of some kind made from man-made fibers. There's enough to make another top if I want, and that will likely happen sometime this summer. But for now, let's see how this turned out. It feels like every time I come out here to do one of these things, the world just decides to get all nice and loud. So hopefully my microphone is filtering out most of the ambient noise. It decided to be a nice windy day today, apparently. Can we talk about the shirt? The shirt is absolutely awesome. I have absolutely no complaints. I probably shouldn't have tried to mash together the sweetie pie and the grafton and just gone with the grafton because the little wings at the hips look a little weird, but kind of like it. Makes the shirt a little bit more unique, though I have to admit that the pattern of the shirt, like the print, is unique enough. I don't think I've seen this kind of print at most of the shops that I go to, so that's fantastic. Really quite like that. I have been wearing this shirt all day. I have been editing the first part of the video in the dining room, and it has just been a treat to have a nice comfortable shirt with long sleeves that fits me and feels comfortable and cozy and is just everything that I have been looking for in a shirt. So thumbs up. Probably will make more of them. I'll probably make a couple more graftons. I found a couple of other patterns on the hard drive from Love Notions, I think. So I think they've got like a classic tee and a laundry day tee and a couple of other things that I may try out since I've got some extra fabric. There was actually quite a bit of fabric left over after making this particular shirt. So we'll see. It could very well be that I'll make a tank top or something to go along with this so that I have a little bit more flexibility in my wardrobe, and that's never a bad thing. So the sweetie pie, it was a bit of a dud. I mean, it's a pretty tunic blouse, but it just didn't fit right. So if you are a person of size who's in that sort of 3X, 4X, 5X range, that's one that I would probably be cautious about unless you have a jersey knit or something with a lot of give. If you've got a knit that has very little give or is a little bit more sturdy, I'd probably steer clear of it. Keep to something like the Grafton from Cashmerette, because, as I said, this is probably the most comfortable t-shirt that I have owned in quite a while. It is something that you can make in one day. I started off around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and altered the pattern. I had to add a little bit of extra length in it because the pattern is made for someone who's 5'6" and I'm taller than that. So I added an extra inch to it. That worked out great. And then I altered it for the little sort of swing out at the hips that didn't actually work out as well as I wanted. But still, it's fine. If I really wanted to, I could probably just serge that out down to the regular Grafton size, and that would be fine. But after altering the pattern, cutting it out, and I managed to get, I think, up to the neckline in and both sleeves attached to the main body by the time I had to drop things, pick up the husbeast from work, make dinner, etc. Came back to it after dinner, and yeah, I stopped somewhere around 2 o'clock in the morning. So doing things lackadaisically, sort of taking my time over a 12-hour stretch, I've got a new shirt. So let's say that you started off at somewhere like 9 o'clock in the morning, you were expecting to have a productive weekend or something. You could conceivably print and cut out the pattern within about an hour or so, give or take. Cut out your pattern, or rather cut out your fabric, get everything put together, and have a new shirt probably by, 9 that evening. So if you needed something new for the next day, you could have it. Most of the construction on here is zigzag stitch. I went over it with the serger afterwards to tidy up some edges. And then a lot of the seaming, like the hems and the sleeves, were just done with the twin needle. So very, very doable if you're a person who doesn't happen to have a serger. If, for instance, you have a machine that has an overlock function on it, you could probably just zigzag your seams, overlock your edges where they're going to be, a little bit more in the breeze, and you'd be fine. You'd be fine. You don't need to have a serger. So I'll probably make more of these shirts. It's extremely comfy. I'll probably stick to the regular Grafton pattern just because it's a little less frou-frou. As I said, the wings at the side are kind of an interesting addition, but they're not necessary. I don't mind having just a plain shirt, and now that I've adjusted it for my height, it's going to be even nicer, at least in terms of length, so perfect there. I think that sewing YouTube, or at least the section that I kind of roam around in, really gets hung up on really complicated, pretty things, and as a result, casual clothing has a tendency to kind of get pushed to the wayside. And it was kind of interesting because I was working on the first couple of shirts when Morgan Donner's latest video came out with her making a couple of knit t-shirts. And my first thought was, crap, I got beaten to the punch by a few days. And the other part to that was, well, wait a second. It's nice that somebody's kind of showing that even the folks who do the complicated historical stuff can slow down and actually make functional clothes, things that instead of being a history bound are just clothing. So I found that wonderful, and I think that's something that we need to see more of. So as much as I like an everyday pair of stays, or an everyday chemise, or an everyday medieval gown, or an everyday walking skirt, it's kind of nice to see something from the past 100 years. Yeah, it's been within the past 100 years that we've had things like t-shirts and so on. Kind of nice to see something like that coming into our stream, and underlining that yes, you can dress for comfort as well as for fashion. And to be very honest with what's been going on in the world lately, dressing for comfort or being able to sew for comfort is going to become more and more necessary, because your cheap t-shirt's not going to be quite as cheap anymore. And if you can go to the store and for the price of a couple of t-shirts, because at my size, a t-shirt is expensive. A shirt like this would cost somewhere close to $30. The fabric for this top, I bought about 3 meters, and it was maybe $30, maybe a little less than $30. And for $30, you can get a t-shirt these days if you're my size. I've always been a bit envious of folks who can go out to a store and pick up a shirt for $5 or $10. But at my size, usually anywhere between $20 and $40 is what you'll pay for a t-shirt that fits. So going out and picking up about 3 meters of fabric for more or less $30 and being able to make more than one item from that fabric is fantastic. The pattern itself is not cheap, but it's something that, because it is digital, you can use it over and over and over again. So again, that leads to sustainability over time. But I can most definitely see making more shirts like this that will actually fit me, and if I wanted to, I could take in the seams if my weight fluctuates down. This way at least I can have a t-shirt or top that fits the way that I want it to fit, whether it's how snug it is at my sides, or whether it has a V-neck or short sleeves or long sleeves, whatever. So it's getting noisy out here. I can hear all of the neighborhood and my hair is just everywhere. So I think I'm going to take it back inside and see what I get up to next time.